Hello, welcome, and an excellent evening. And today I might sound a bit weird because, well, weirder than usual. I have a cold. I've had it for the last couple of days, but lying in bed and sitting on the sofa is very boring. So I thought I might do something very, very simple and quick, hopefully quick. Otherwise, I will take this up when I got better. But at least we can have a look. This here is another Commodore 64 that a friend brought over. It's his family's. I think his dad bought it. On the bottom there's the name, the address of his dad, so I will censor that with a bit of tape. And yeah, he found that again. It is in perfect visual, optical, physical condition. Looks spanking new, actually. It is one of the old Breadbins, so I'm very curious to see which board revision is inside. There's a weird cable hanging out of the cartridge port, but we'll ignore that for now. And he said it doesn't work. So we'll have a quick power on with our good new power supply and video cable attached. The light comes on. There seems to be video, but it's black. I don't see the white bar of the VIC. However, I think my capture device cuts that off, at least with a good C64 also don't have that bar. So I'm in good hopes that the VIC is okay. Let's plug in this dead test / voltage meter and frequency display, which shows if the clock is actually there. It's the UFD Rev2. I made a video about that, probably putting a link up there. And it says it's booting the dead test. It sees 5.04 or 03 volts, which is perfectly fine, and 985.27 kilohertz, which is to be expected of a PAL machine. So there's nothing. That can mean a bunch of things. My guess with these machines, and from what I've seen in other people's repairs, is the PLA. Probably the PLA, maybe something else. I do have a GAL PLA replacement here that we can drop in, and then maybe we have a quick fix. Let's see about that. But yeah, if it's the PLA, that would be neat. If it's a CPU, it gets more complicated and I will have to pick it up another time. There could be also other things going wrong. I doubt it that it's the ROMs or anything, because I think then the DAT test should have worked. And yeah, that did not work or come up, because I think that can run even without the the ROMs working. But there's only one way to find out. Let's open it up. Also, let's see where this wire is coming from. We can probably desolder that or remove it. Maybe it's from an old reset switch or something, but then I would have assumed that there's another wire coming out. Who knows? Yeah, let's crack this thing open. So here's the board. It is a long board, obviously. Assembly number 250407. Yeah, interesting facts. Many things are socketed. The CIAs are socketed. In fact, the CIAs have precision sockets, actually. However, I do see date codes of 1386 for the PLA, the CPU. That means that's probably around the time when this board was assembled. And 2786 for the CIAs. So I don't think these sockets have been replaced during a repair. I think Commodore Germany, for once, used actually good sockets on this machine, which is funny. However, there is, or maybe they didn't, maybe there was a replacement and someone burnt the CIAs. Yeah, but the date codes match pretty nicely. It's only like 3 months apart. The SID chip is from '84, interesting enough, much older, and has also one of those crappy sockets. I might remove the SID chip while playing around with this to avoid damaging it. If it's still alive, who knows. But also there are two more socketed chips. The PLA is sadly not socketed, so that will be job for the solder gun if we want to replace that. But first, before I replace the PLA, there's a Morse logic chip. There are actually multiple Morse logic chips, but there's one. Date code 5083, it's a 7711. I have to look up what that is normally. I might have that here because I have a range of logic chips floating around. And there's another socketed logic chip. Actually, I think it's the 555 by the looks of it from Motorola. So I wouldn't suspect that. Motorola is a solid brand. But I think I might pop out the TL866 and test this chip right away, just to make sure that it's not simply this logic chip and that, I don't know, probably does something with the RAM or something and prevents the machine from booting. After that, I would maybe probe the signals on the PLA and or remove the PLA. Nothing is hot in here anymore. If something got really burning hot during a few seconds, but yeah, it had some time to cool off anyway. We might check that as well. Okay, I'm testing this chip now. So the chip tested okay in the TL866, but this is always a go-to problem, obviously. The RAMs are from Samsung, so I would guess that they are fine. Car moving past. Interesting enough, this seems to be just a ground lead for whatever reason. I'm gonna remove it. It was just screwed in at the top right here. But I think even with that removed, we still get a black screen, yes. So next up would be to probe a little bit around and perhaps to remove the PLA, I guess, which is soldered in, as I said. Also, I'm really wondering, this being made in 1986, this must have been a very late model, actually. I wonder if this is one of those Aldi ones, but I think they had a different case. No, I think he told me that he bought this at Alkauf, which is another general department store, grocery store brand that used to be here in Germany. So, but very interesting. I thought by 1986 the C64C was already out, but what do I know? Definitely an odd combination as usual with some of these sockets and chip mixtures. Very interesting indeed. Well, a bit of scoping around, and I removed the SID chip, as I said. A bit of scoping around shows that the CPU definitely has the clock signal. It does seem to get the reset signal. I tested that as well. So reset as a low for a second, then it goes high. That should be fine. I probed address line 0 and a couple of others, and they look not quite okay, I would say. Especially there's stuff there from the very beginning. I have to look a bit up, but I think that might still be due to the PLA doing garbage and then the address bus having all kinds of nonsense on there. Probably the VIC doing its thing, etc. So my money is still on that, but I will research a little bit, and then if I'm pretty sure, I will desolder this thing, and hopefully that's that, because that's the easiest to replace. Otherwise, we have to analyze a bit further what might be going wrong. So after careful analysis, we determined that This chip here is fine. This is a MOS 7711, which is a 74LS139 equivalent, which is a good thing that this is okay, because I don't have that at the moment. I ordered some because this might fail any moment, because MOS produced very crappy 74 logic chips. And this here U27, it's for the color RAM and for some other signaling chip enable. This looked weird on the oscilloscope. The outputs here and here were always low. So I took it out and tested in the TL866, and it turned out it is defective. 5 faults in the logic table. So I have a 74LS08. I will put in a socket and put that in, and then maybe we already fixed that. So the chip has been replaced with also with a nice socket to make it easier to swap it out in the future. Here's the dead chip, and now let's turn the machine on and see what happens. And still there is a black screen. So that was not the last thing that was broken. Yeah, back to the drawing board, I would say. So, careful analysis showed that probably the kernel ROM here is defective. It also looks quite different than the other two, but, well, that's maybe just as it is. So what we'll have to do now is desolder this. I do have a adapter here that I need to solder for regular 27256 EEPROMs. We'll try to do that, and we can flash that with a fresh copy of the kernel, and maybe then we'll have actually the repaired machine. Let's see. So we have now quite the tower here. There's now a precision CNC socket here, and the EEPROM adapter, because you need that, because 27256 ROMs don't fit in here just like that. This specific adapter I needed to populate with a socket, bridge 2 pads here, because there is also room for a jumper or switch, so that you can pick between different banks. However, we won't need that here, so we will hardwire it just as is. And now I will simply write a kernel, regular kernel 4 times onto a 256 ROM and put it in here. And then, all fingers crossed, this machine works again. Hopefully, that is the last fault. So the EEPROM has been written to and inserted. Yes, later I'm gonna put a sticker on here, but it will take many years for this to be erased, especially when it's in the case. So no worries there. This should be good to go. The capture device is running. Let's turn it on. We get a black screen, and there we go. Look at that. 38,911 basic bytes free. The question is, will the diag test show some problems? We don't have a test harness, so we will get some issues on the external ports, obviously, but that we can ignore more or less. So yeah, let's quickly run this through and see if there's any issues. And a very quick note, the diag test ran to completion. All the bad signs here are due to the missing ports, and even the SID works well. All 3 voices seem to be fine, so that's all great. Let's skip over to the floppy drive that came with this Breadbin. Along with the C64, I got also this 1541-2 drive, which doesn't quite fit to the brown Breadbin, but they also had a dataset, so I think this might have come later. It might have been just the model that was current at the point they bought it. So it's not a 1541-1, but it's still one of the drives with the Mitsumi Neutronics mechanism. While I have 2 of those that still work, I have a lot of 1541 ones with Mitsumi Neutronics drives where the head assembly is broken. And what happens is one of the wires in the magnetic coils, there are like 2 or 3 magnetic coils inside the head, breaks. This can't really be repaired. The head can be seen here. This is the white thing with the black stripe, because it's all potted in resin. And there are some people who manage to do some repair depending on where the breakage occurs. Yeah, but Mitsumi wasn't making super good reed heads at the time. Well, they were good enough for the time being, but after 30 to 40 years they break down. Other manufacturers don't have that issue, especially the Alps mechanisms that are especially common in the 1541, like this one. They are very reliable. And there are also like 1541-2 with Chinon drives, and those don't have the issue either. However, we were a little bit lucky on this particular device because the red wire here was broken somewhere over there at the head. And what you can do to at least partially salvage this without having to replace the head assembly, which is relatively expensive if you can get a working head, is the fact that you can swap the yellow and the red wire, which I basically did here with these DuPont cables. So yeah, and I fixed it or made it a bit more permanent with some Captain tape. And now this device can at least read discs by utilizing the erase coil actually for reading purposes. But you can't write to the disk anymore, which is fine if you're just playing games without any save games such as Manic Mansion or Zack McCracken. But simple games, shoot 'em ups or something, and or you're just watching demos which never write to the disk. So at least we can get a little bit more life out of this device, and should this person decide to want to repair it fully, we can still do a head swap. There are some currently available, cost about 30 euros and is a bit fiddly to get in here, but not impossible to do so. Yeah, so that's just for completeness sake. I'm gonna close this up as well. Yeah. And for a quick test run, let's load up a demo. In this case, this is Genesis project with the demo No Bounds from a couple of years ago. And, or is it from this year? I forgot. Definitely a good demo that tasks both the C64 and the floppy drive quite a bit. So let's have a quick listen and enjoy the demo. So there we are. This is the Breadbin repaired and in action, and actually that over there is the drive that came with it, and it loads games fine. I ran a couple of demos, as you saw, all without any issues. Well, you can't write anymore, but that's the way it is, I would say. So how did we achieve this? The machine had a black screen, but seemingly it still had video signal and a clock, which was fine. So upon first inspection, we saw two MOS logic chips, and those are always very suspect. The first one that was socketed, I tested in my TL866 and it turned out fine. Also, I tested it in circuit and the results also looked fine. So while there was a slim chance that it was not good, we turned our attention to the one right next to it, and that was an AND gate, quad AND gate, and the outputs looked, at least on two outputs, very wrong. So we took it out, and here it is, a MOS 7712, which is a 74LS08 equivalent, so I replaced that. But afterwards, things were still bad, still a black screen. So we further looked around. The PLA was still in question, the kernel ROM was still in question, and the PLA would generate the chip select for the kernel ROM, which is pin, let's see, this way up, pin 20, which is this pin here. So on the scope, I looked at this, and the chip select was coming in okay. So the suspicion was that not the PLA was dead, but instead the kernel ROM. So I quickly assembled an adapter for a 27256 EEPROM, and lo and behold, everything worked. I put the thing through its paces. It seems to be just fine now. I think my friend will have a good time playing stuff like Galancia on this machine, as long as he doesn't require to save anything. He can still attach an SD to IEC, or better, a Pi 1541, and have a lot of fun, or decide to replace the drive with a working one, or refurbish it with a new head. Yeah, but I think this is a very successful repair. One of the more complicated ones that I did. But still, in the end, it was only two broken parts. I also replaced the other MOS chip, the 7711, I think. Yes, that's correct. With a proper LS139 chip from National Semi. So that should last longer now than the MOS chip that's in there. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But that's it for the moment. Thank you very much for watching. My voice is still pretty raspy. It's been a couple of days now, but the cold is getting better, so that's good. Share, like, and subscribe, the usual stuff. Leave a comment on your C64 repair adventures or your favorite games on the C64, whatever you like. Yeah, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!